Hello, and welcome to this edition of Washington Notebook, featuring Congressman Dave Camp. For the latest inside information from our nation's capital, Washington Notebook talks today with special guest Dave Camp.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Washington Notebook. I'm Congressman Dave Camp, and today I'll be talking with Stephen Ayers, the architect of the Capitol. Stephen was appointed the 11th architect of the Capitol on May 13, 2010. And the architect of the Capitol cares for the United States Capitol and all the buildings around it, some of which include the House and Senate Congressional office buildings, the Capitol Visitor Center, the Library of Congress buildings, the U.S. Supreme Court, the Botanic Garden, and almost 500 acres of Capitol grounds. And these buildings hold about 30,000 employees and attract about 3 million visitors every year. So as the architect of the Capitol, Stephen ensures these buildings maintain their functionality. They are working, living buildings, but they're also historic buildings. So I want to thank Stephen and his predecessors for the good work they've done. The Capitol's been beautifully preserved for all Americans to enjoy and experience when they come to Washington, D.C. So Stephen, thank you very much for joining me today. Can you tell us just a little bit about your job and what the role of the architect of the Capitol is?
Well, sure, I'd be happy to, and thank you for having me. So it's like managing a little city within this wonderful city of Washington, D.C., and managing all of the buildings and infrastructure, but primarily ensuring that the Congress has the buildings and facilities it needs every day to conduct its business. That's really my job, to make your job easier.
And some of the history of this beautiful area we know as the Capitol grounds, what can you tell us about that?
You know, the Capitol grounds are historic. They were designed in 1874 through about 1890 by famed landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted, the same landscape architect that designed the main garden in New York City.
Central Park.
Central Park, thank you. I was at a loss for that word. So they are beautiful and historic, and we work hard every day to keep them true to the historic nature as Frederick Law Olmsted would have wanted.
And then the Capitol itself, which is obviously the center of this Capitol complex. Who was the architect of that, and when did it become the seat of Congress?
Well, the architect was Dr. William Thornton, was the first architect, and there have been 11 in our history, in our 219 or 220-year history here in D.C., and I'm honored to be the 11th. Dr. William Thornton, as the first, won that distinction through a design competition. And when Pierre L'Enfant in 1791 was working with President Washington to lay out this wonderful city of Washington, they picked Jenkins Hill, one of the highest points in the city. L'Enfant laid out the streets, all of them pointing to and from this Capitol building. And then Dr. William Thornton designed the first building, and it was constructed and first occupied in 1800, cornerstone being laid by President Washington himself in 1793.
What do you think are some of the most interesting parts of the Capitol grounds, or the most historic, that our viewers might be interested in?
You know, from the Capitol grounds, I think one of the hidden gems is Frederick Law Olmsted's summer house, which is on the west front of the Capitol, on the north side of the west front of the Capitol. And this is a wonderful brick structure that's built into the side of the land. It's got some water features in it, and it's a wonderful place of respite. And you think about what members of Congress were dealing with during those days in the heat and no air conditioning, and the raucous debate that often took place in the Capitol building. And it was a place for members to go, take a few moments to collect their thoughts and de-stress from the day, collect their thoughts, and then get back to work. It's a wonderful place that many people don't know it even exists.
I think we need a few places more to collect our thoughts, frankly, around here. But tell me, there's been recently a fairly major addition to the Capitol called the Capitol Visitor Center. And can you describe that and what that role that plays now in people who come to our U.S. Capitol?
The Capitol Visitor Center is what we call the 9th increment of growth in the Capitol. And Interestingly, one of the questions I often get is, when was the Capitol building finished? And we say it's not finished today. It's been growing and evolving, matching the growth and evolution of our country since it was constructed. As the 9th addition to the Capitol, it's really the new front door to the Capitol and offers a welcoming and respectful experience for visitors coming to visit the Congress. And it also has an extensive collection of educational exhibits where people can come learn about the Congress, learn about how to get involved in our democratic society, and learn history of the Capitol building and history of this wonderful city of Washington, D.C. You know, prior to this visitor center, you would have to wait in line, sometimes 4 hours or 5 hours outside before you got into the Capitol. And once you were in, there's no educational exhibits, there's no public restrooms, and no place to have lunch. And all of those things were done with the construction of this new visitor center. And it's really a great addition and a welcoming experience for visitors coming from across the country and across the globe.
Well, one of the most enjoyable things I get to see is so many families and individuals enjoying access to the Capitol. It's a working building, but it's a public building as well, and the public is there all day, and it's very exciting to see the looks on their faces and see them enjoy that experience. But as you mentioned with the visitor centers, I think one of the exciting things is this audio tour that's now available, which, as you mentioned, was one of the things that wasn't there before. And can you describe that a bit and what that entails?
The audio tour is a really excellent enhancement to the tour process. Prior to the audio tour, we would have 8 or 9 tours going through the Capitol building at a time, and each tour guide trying to one-up the other tour guide to communicate with their group. And it just became so loud that people couldn't work and couldn't focus and couldn't concentrate. So now we think it's a much better experience where visitors come and we provide them a little headset, and our tour guides that are really wonderful people and have such a great sense of history and knowledge of the Capitol building and of the Congress. They speak into a little microphone and everybody can hear. No one has to yell. No one has to one-up another tour guide or another tour group, and it's a much more, I think, respectful experience in the Capitol building.
You know, obviously in the Capitol we have the House and Senate chambers on either end of the complex, but a lot of people that visit ask me about Statuary Hall and the state's statues. And of course Michigan just placed former House member and former President, Vice President and President Gerald R. Ford with a new statue in the Capitol. He's in the Rotunda, not in Statuary Hall. But can you talk a little bit about that and the statue collections that the Capitol contains?
That's a great question. You know, Statuary Hall wasn't always Statuary Hall. Statuary Hall was the original hall of the House from about 1807 till 1857. And if you recall, westward expansion and the number of representatives increased, the Capitol building had to increase in size. And that was constructed, and the House moved out of their original chamber into the current chamber in 1857. And then in 1864, Representative Morrill said, well, what are we going to do with this space? Why don't we make it a collection of statues from every state? And that's what it is today. Every state can donate 2 statues to the collection, and we manage that and work with each state legislature and state governor to bring those statues in and out of the collection, or in until 2000. And in 2000, the Congress passed a law enabling states to move statues back and forth, and that's how Zachariah Chandler, I think, moved out, and yes, President Ford moved in. And I've got a great picture of him that you can see of him in the Rotunda.
Oh, yeah, it's a very nice statue, yes, very nice likeness.
Yes.
And of course, Zachariah Chandler was sent back to the state capitol in Lansing. I understand is beneath the Rotunda in the state capitol.
That's
now.
Exactly right.
So they don't stay here. If there's only 2, and if they replace them with another, then they're sent back to the state.
That's correct. But I think that was a really good enhancement starting in 2000, enabling states to replace statues. So there have been a number of them that have happened in those 12 years, and I think it's really freshened up the statue collection.
And being our only president from Michigan, we're obviously very honored to have him in the Capitol, in the rotunda of the Capitol. And he was obviously a very well-known figure in our state, and actually was influential in having me get on the Ways and Means Committee, which I chair now. So I'll still remember that call to Gerald Ford as a former president, and his willingness, because as a former House leader, he still had some contacts and certainly helped me get on that committee. So we certainly appreciate that very much. Now, tell me,
that's not the only statue that Michigan has, of course. You do
No.
have one in Statuary Hall.
We do, Lewis Cass, and I don't want to give him short shrift.
So I have a shot of him as well in Statuary Hall.
And I've had a lot of pictures taken near that statue with a lot of visitors. Territorial governor, and there's a very well-known high school in Detroit called Cass Technical High School, named after him. Now,
And a senator, I believe.
And he was a senator also. There were also are some number of other artworks in the Capitol in addition to the statues, which I'm not sure a lot of people are aware of. Can you just briefly talk about some of those?
So not only are the National Statuary Hall collection, when the Congress wants to place another statue in the collection, we work on their behalf to curate that and often hold design competitions. We've recently placed Sojourner Truth in the Capitol Visitor Center through a design competition on behalf of the Congress. We also are responsible for the Vice Presidential Bust collection. So every Vice President has a marble bust. Some of them are in the Senate chamber, and others surround the Senate chamber. And today we're working with a sculptor that's working on both Vice President Gore and Vice President Cheney. So there's other statuary. Not only that, the Capitol is replete with some wonderful pieces of artwork, my favorite being the apotheosis of George Washington at the top of the rotunda in the Capitol building. It's really a beautiful piece of artwork that's interesting to me because as you view it up close, it's really spectacular, as well as viewing it from the floor of the rotunda 180 feet down is equally spectacular.
Oh yes, it is incredible. Now, for people who aren't able to come here, is there a way for them at home to maybe have a chance to experience and view the Capitol?
Absolutely. We've got a fantastic website at www.aoc.gov, and you can log on to that site and see a number of videos and even a virtual tour of the Capitol building that really places you in the building itself, and it feels like you're there. And it's lots of other information on statues and artwork is available there as well.
Excellent. Now, the U.S. Botanic Gardens aren't often talked about. They're part of the Capitol complex as well, are they not?
They are. You know, in the Capitol Visitor Center, we receive about 2.5 million visitors a year there. And on the other side of the Capitol, the United States Botanic Garden, nearly 1 million visitors a year come to see the Botanic Garden. And it dates back from George Washington himself. He felt it so important to educate our society about the value of plants that he wanted a botanic garden for the nation, and it was built during his era.
You know, one of the other services your office provides is flying flags over the U.S. Capitol, which actually are really flown over the Capitol. Can you talk about that and how that's available?
Well, they really are flown over the Capitol building, and it's a wonderful gift. It's a service to members. It's a fee for service. It's a wonderful opportunity for members and others to provide a nice memento of a flag flown over a Capitol for someone's wedding, or a Boy Scout reaching his rank of Eagle Scout, or some other retirement ceremony or something like that. So you can have one flown by going onto your member's website, going onto your website and filling out the right paperwork and making the right payment. And then we'll take that flag, and we really do fly them over the Capitol building, package them up, and I sign a certificate for every single one that says this flag actually was flown over the Capitol building.
I know sometimes when I've been giving tours, you can sometimes see them raising and lowering flags, and they may not fly for long, but they do actually fly over the Capitol, as you point out, and they have a certificate from you indicating that that's happened, and that certainly is a generous gift to give. Well, first of all, I want to thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for the hard work that you and your office do in making tours available and keeping these beautiful Capitol grounds open to the public and historically intact, because they're not new buildings, and it is impressive to see how they've been maintained and enjoyed for so long.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you're interested in coming to Washington, D.C., and you'd like more information on the U.S. Capitol and other buildings that we've talked about today, please contact my office by calling the phone number at the end of the show or visit my website, camp.house.gov. And thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Washington Notebook.
To contact Congressman Camp's office, check out the addresses on your screen or call 1-800-342-2455.